Good evening. Hello. Good evening. Hello. And the light bulb came on. I got a million of them. Who was that? Jimmy Durante? I don't know. Fly me to the moon and let me play amongst the stars. You can learn about love. That is not the microphone I'm using. All right. Well, it's 6 p.m. It's June 8th, 2021. The name of this podcast is Law and Disorder with your host, Ken Goldberg. I, perchance, am Ken Goldberg, so we are synchronized in that regard. So we don't have to worry about any copyright infringement here. I'm me. Hi, Rachel, Lisa, Becky. Hey, Becky, I hope his ride got better. His ride got better after being stuck in traffic for hours. Oh, God, that's so miserable. I can only imagine how he was. All right, and if you're on YouTube and you're watching this now or later, and you hear me making reference to Becky, Lisa, Rachel, or anybody else, typically means that I am also talking to people on Facebook who are also watching, but are watching simultaneously on Facebook. So please don't get discombobulated when you see me talking and there's nobody there, because on YouTube tonight, so far, there's nobody. All right, so this is big. If I pull this off, and I don't know that I can, if I pull this off, I will have talked about a theme 3 nights. The very idea is intimidating. Hi, Kathy. The idea that I would endeavor, successfully, unsuccessfully, even to think about doing like parts. First off, it takes some of the spontaneity out, but not really, and I'll explain why in a second. It takes some of the spontaneity out because there's a topic. And I do understand this much. It's different than when I posted in the title page and it was more related to music. This is the third time that I'm talking on the topic that's in the title, knowing thyself. To thy own self be true. Anything you want to think of in self. And so this is the last of what is now a 3-part series. When I began this, it was a 1-part series. And then I was just not comfortable with how I finished the first one. So I said, you got to have a second one, right? Wrap it up. After I finished the second one, I thought, you're still leaving out a lot of information. So bear with me, ladies and gentlemen, while I take you on this journey, because that's what I think part 3 will be. It will be incorporating the journey that I've traveled the last 11 years, and how that plays into my practice, my self-discovery, my spiritual development, and the way I've handled matters. Let's just leave it at matters for the moment. So, okay, here's where I wanted to kind of go. So I don't even remember, but I think part 1 was essentially the Buddhist concept of, hey, Chris. Yeah, Chris texted earlier on Facebook that he spent like 2 hours to go 4 miles. I would hang myself. When the highway cleared on his way to visit home in Indiana. Anyways, I went off the path. Let me get back on the path, because this is my grasp of the subject is tenuous at best. So the first day I kind of talked about how the Buddhist practice led me to realize that I'm not me. I'm certainly not me that I experience on a daily basis. The me that I typically experience is Um, well, uh, that me was more defined by you, by how people reacted to the me I thought I was. See, and then so I immersed myself at some point in two things. I immersed myself in the 12-step program. Alcoholics Anonymous, could have been Narcotics Anonymous, could have been any 12-step program. Al-Anon, I spent 10 years in Al-Anon. Um, and so I began to work on this spiritual journey, and a lot of it is scripted. I mean, I wasn't charting new territory. It was new for me. It was nothing new. The 12-step program has been around since, I don't know, the 30s or something, and the Buddhist program has been around 2,600 years. Embarked on that journey purposefully and accidentally. So so that was kind of like part one. It was an exploration of stepping into a spiritually a realm intended to develop spiritually primarily. And then part two was to distinguish the concept that I talked about in the first night, about I'm not me. I'm not my hand, right? You could cut off my hand. I'm still going to function. You could cut off my ear. Where am I? Science has never discovered where I am. They've never discovered the soul of anybody, and they really cannot do a whole lot around thought. They can see electrical activity, but they can't read that electrical activity, what's actually going on. It's just synapses, and they can say, you have synapses. Or, you know what? You don't have synapses in places you should. There's brain damage. Korsakoff's disease, I studied that when I was a drug counselor. And Korsakoff's disease is what we call wet brain, right? I say right as though we're all doing this together. So wet brain is something that an alcoholic, significant abuser of alcohol would have. It is a damage brought about by the overindulgence in alcohol, which results in the death of pathways in the brain. And so what happens in Korsakoff's disease or wet brain, and we would see a younger person who is having dementia. It looks exactly like dementia, but it was brought about not by aging, and it wasn't brought about by disease. It was brought about by alcohol. So Korsakoff's disease was that pathways that connected parts of the brain had died. And thus, while there was more brain matter that was potentially or maybe actually active, say at the back of your head versus the front of your head, there was no connection between the front and the back. Thus, you lost a portion of your brain, and in the absence of that, you began to take on the symptoms of dementia. Now, what we do know, this is the footnotes, got nothing to do with anything that I'm talking about. We do know that if you abstain from alcohol and you're young enough, that the brain will prod itself and find new pathways. Okay? New cells will eventually connect, and people who have Korsakoff's may in fact find themselves in better shape. And today they just announced that they have a product, a pharmaceutical product that the FDA has approved, which will hopefully diminish dementia. So we have drugs now that are intended to mitigate the symptoms of dementia, but today the FDA gave approval to a drug that they hope will actually prevent dementia, minimize its onset. So the second day was kind of devoted to I'm still self. That all the talk about self and no self in religion, in philosophy, whether it's Richard Rohr talking or the Untethered Soul Person, whatever, all these books that try to explain self-help books, philosophy books. They, I found this ongoing paradox. Nobody could ever really get around who I am. No one writer, despite their elevated status, some of whom I have tremendous respect for, was ever able to drive home to me. And that could be because I'm slow. This paradox of I'm not my thoughts, but I'm thinking and propelling myself through the world by virtue of my thoughts. So, but here's what I know. Okay, it's part three. I meditate, and I meditate at least 3 days a week because I teach 3 days a week. Sometimes I meditate more. I don't meditate less, but I sometimes meditate more. When I'm meditating, I've really come to discover that for me, it's like I bought a ticket to the three-ring circus. And I indicated that in one of the earlier talks. I can literally feel like I am sitting up in the spectator section and looking down at everything that unfolds and realizing that this has been going on for 68 years, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Whether I intentionally am thinking or I'm not intentionally thinking, doesn't matter. The brain is going to function. If the brain stops generating thoughts, there's two probabilities. The highest probability is you're dead. Okay. The second probability is you've achieved a status that we refer to as enlightenment. In a lot of people call it enlightenment, where you can be thoughtless. I don't know anybody that's ever come back and reported they were thoughtless. So I'm going with the probability if you're not thinking is you're dead. So so the thoughts are beyond my control typically. What meditation has done for me, the value of meditation and significantly is what we call mindfulness. And mindfulness is this awareness of my separation from matters that I engage with, that I grasp to cling, aversion to, right? Those are really active maneuvers on my part to cling to something that's pleasurable or to try to avoid something that's unpleasant. And I told you yesterday that's my external world, a very busy place to be. And when it's not busy, I will busy it up. I will turn on the television and I will allow myself to get engrossed in the television. Just like I love the movies. I go to a lot of movies. Well, I haven't for the last year, but I went every week that there were new movies out. I might go once, I might go 3 times. I don't care. I couldn't overdo movies and matinees. So I love to sit in a theater or to lay in bed, lights low, big screen, get engrossed in whatever's happening. This is a very external thing, right? I mean, I'm not thinking it, but I am aligning with it. I'm bringing my senses to this action. And in doing that, I begin to divert my mind's ability to drag me off into the future or back to the past because I'm focused. Well, what I found is that more productive in terms of spiritual wellness is to bring that focus to my inner world, to my breath, to this moment. This creates mindfulness. Watching television or movies is mindlessness. And there's nothing wrong in my book with mindlessness. Man, if they had a competition for mindlessness, I would consider entering it. But it's not the healthiest place in the long run, right? Um, you know, it's okay to be mindless, but charting your life shouldn't be a mindless activity. For me, in some respects, it was always a mindless activity. because I adopted and adapted what I needed along the way. I'm a very ethical guy. I'm a very honest guy and always have been. But 11 years ago or 12 years ago, I took vows. Vows, can you imagine that? I took vows, right? And the vows, there were 5 of them. They're the Buddhist vows. I've talked about them, but I'll say them again so you know where I'm going. To refrain from the taking of any life, to refrain from stealing or taking which is not freely given, to refrain from lying, to refrain from sexual misconduct, and to refrain from partaking of intoxicating substances. After I made this vow, I was like, I signed up. And it was like entering into a contract with the universe. And in this case, this was my side of the contract, was these 5 precepts. But I needed something more, because you can vow all you want. I used to vow I'm not going to drink tomorrow, and I would drink, or I'm not going to smoke meth tomorrow, but I smoked meth. It took structure, 12 steps, to keep me like this, so that I didn't get up and break my vow to myself not to drink or to drug. Well, the same thing is happening in this Buddhist practice. There's this 8-fold noble path, they call it, the 8-fold path. And it's a moral guideline. It gave me the same kind of guidepost, direction that 12 steps gives me. But it was broader, because it wasn't focused on don't drink or drug. And it was broader because it demanded of me that I would have to study this thing I call Ken, you call Ken. And so my spiritual life deepens only because, 1, I set out to meditate, but 2, I don't just sit there. I know a lot of people can do this. A lot of people can just sit and, for them, meditating might be having an out-of-body experience, or they very psychedelic experience. It's an experience. For me, the way I was trained by the monks, meditation is not an experience. It's the very essence of being. It's being present. So everything that happens while I'm meditating, I'm aware of. I'm not typically doing things that are mindless. I'm sitting there. I have one mandate: to stay with the breath. So for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I have something to do. Focus on this struggle to stay in the present moment. Struggling to stay in the present moment, because my inclination is to be scattered throughout. I need to have concentration to be mindful, but it doesn't pay for me to be mindful unless I know what that means. So the Buddha, in my case, taught that there were, when you meditate, you're using that to develop mental discipline, moral conduct, and wisdom. Wow. Right? 3 essential elements of my practice, which I launch through my meditation, but I have to do whether I'm meditating or not, is to develop moral conduct, mental discipline, and wisdom. And the name for this meditation practice that I've had for years is called Vipassana, insight. And the initial practice of meditation, just sitting and trying to be present, is called samadhi, concentration. So I'm trying to concentrate on the breath for a purpose, not just to relax. In fact, relaxation has got nothing to do with it. A lot of people come to me after meditation, oh, that was really relaxing. And I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. That wasn't the point, but I get it. And here's why I get it. When I stay in the moment, I am unbothered, if that's such a word, by the difficulties of the past or the anxiety of the future. In the moment, I'm able to just breathe and I land up relaxing. It's a byproduct of meditation is relaxation. But I discovered what the monk said. Do not meditate for serenity, meditate for sanity. But I need pathways. And so I was taught by the monks to practice right understanding. That means to examine things mindfully in the moment, not with the scattered senselessness that I try to grasp the world with. I'm too distracted in my outer world. In my inner world, I can examine things and I can see when I'm, how do you say, askew. I was taught the right thought was absolutely essential to my spiritual practice. What I mean by that is, if I'm having not immoral, if I'm having thoughts that are really going to drive me into doing something unskillful or are going to cause me to interpret actions around me wrong. You are jesting with me. I get aggravated. I don't see it as a jest, right? And so I'm just, all my thoughts are just reactions. Yeah, no, in right thought. I'm very skillful at practicing right thought and right speech. And right speech in Buddhism, you've all heard it in a variety of ways. It's attributed to Gandhi and Martin Luther King and this person, that person. Here's what the Buddha said. I'm paraphrasing many years ago. Is it true? If it's not true, you don't say it. You just don't say it. That was the first test. First test, is it true? If you don't know it to be true, if it's gossip, you don't say it. Gossip is not truth, right? It may accidentally be truth, but then it wouldn't be gossip. Next would be to examine whether what I'm about to say can be beneficial. Is what I'm going to say beneficial? Will the person who's hearing me, will they benefit from this? And then the third one really was, is it agreeable? So it could be that it is true and beneficial, but is the wrong time. It's not going to be agreeable. Doesn't matter that so many of us do not want to change, even when the change is for the good. So somebody may share with us thoughts that are, if we would allow ourselves to examine them, we would recognize they're true, they're beneficial, and they should be agreeable. So we counsel ourselves to say things at the right time. You have to think. Right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. Those were the 8 elements of training the mind. And if I do that stuff, I'm not going to get into, I could bore the crap out of you by going into each one like I was starting to do. The thing is, if I found that when I apply this path to my thoughts and meditations, I am experiencing something that I believe looks like spiritual growth and transformation. I believe I'm better behaved as a direct result. I am so troubled by thoughts that come to my mind so readily. I just utter violence. I mean, literally just utter violence. I can be alone in a parking lot and suddenly have a violent fantasy that I will just say it out loud. About a year ago or so, I decided that if I even saw a kernel of one of those thoughts, I would begin to shut it down, that I would not entertain negative thoughts, violent thoughts, aggressive thoughts. When I saw the beginnings of it getting ready to pop, that I would shut it down. I'm not perfect at it, but I got to tell you that I never even tried for the first 55 years. I never tried. The only thing that would keep me from saying something violent, aggressive, unskillful, unmindful was that I could literally get hurt saying it, or I get hurt saying my client. If I don't be careful, my client's going to pay for this. So in court, I tend to be very mindful. I just always was. It was a place where I was always in the moment. In court, dig it, man. I'm in the moment. It's why I was good at what I did. Same thing with social work. When I worked with street kids, I was in the moment on the street. It's why I didn't get shot, beat, clubbed with a baseball bat, and who knows what other harm might befall me. But in my personal life, by the way, I'm very mindful when I'm handling firearms too. And when I opened up the gun range, I noted that this is something, no lapse. You can't have a lapse. You can't be mindless. Now, you would see people, I mean, if you live in a gun range and you see people handling firearms, you're like, oh my God, will you please pay attention? That person, can you believe? I give you an idea. I know because I'm trained, when a gun malfunctions, the likelihood is most people are right-handed. And so when they're on a firing range and something malfunctions, they're going to turn their gun to the left to examine the gun because the gun is in their right hand. They can't turn it that way. They have to turn it that way. So I recognize that the safest place for me to be when I was on my own range was all the way to the right. So if anybody shot wrong to the left, I wasn't in the line of fire. I did this because I knew that people were just reacting. Oh, something's wrong. Whereas with me, with my training, when I had a problem, say with a firearm, what they call a misfire, okay, I would turn my body so the gun was still facing out. I had to be mindful or I could have been dead. And when I violated that stuff, there was always some consequence. So those three arenas, I could be mindful about that specific thing. But in general, my personal life is mindless and not skillful. And you all know that because everybody here has had at least one conversation with me in your life. And you probably noted that I just utter whatever comes to my mind. That can be refreshing at times, people say, but it can also be not so refreshing. It can just be troublesome, needlessly troublesome. And that is something I never recognized. I thought troublesome was just part of the territory. This is what you get. You got this thing called Ken. You got troublesome remarks. You got a lack of sensitivity. I thought that nice people were born nice, and I would envy that they were nice, sweet, kind, considerate. I would look at people like that, and I'm telling you what the thought process was. I like those people. It's so nice. I wish I could be like them. And you wouldn't know this, but I was super protective of nice people who were in my circle, right? By that I mean if I saw that you were if I knew that you were just one of these genuinely nice people who some of the more scandalous people would try to prey upon, that's when I was in my element, right? Because most of the people I was around who were sweet and kind weren't combative and aggressive. So I was there to be combative and aggressive for them. I know, right? And actually, most of the time, these people, these nice people, could get away with murder because they were nice. People liked them, right? And they didn't need necessarily my help, but occasionally they did, and occasionally I had to take no prisoners. But aging, meditation, abstinence from mood-altering drugs, this has been critical to creating a mindful presence in the world. Call it Ken, make up a name for it. You know, should my internal life be called by the same name my external one is? You know, I got more yin yang inside than I have outside. Outside, I'm more yang. Inside, there's a lot more yin. It's a much more of a blend. But I've struggled almost constantly with the habit of mindlessness. And so we do not come to skillful speech, skillful actions just by wishing it so. We don't get there just by meditating. And the Buddha never said we would. Even though he mandated meditation was critical to a good life, to discovering freedom from happiness, to not freedom from happiness, freedom from suffering, key to happiness. So more and more as the years go by, this practice, this internal practice is beginning to shape my external world. I have fewer resentments, not because I don't have things to resent just as I did in the past. I do. I just don't bother with the resentment. I don't loan money. That cut down on a lot of resentments. And I don't practice a lot of law. I'm practicing some law, and I don't charge a lot. And one of the reasons I don't charge a lot is I want to be able to walk away, and I don't want to owe you money. So it's like I'm walking away. Listen, you got to deal with whatever you paid me to do for you. Whatever I did, you got to bargain, right? So so this learning myself is a function of purposefully undertaking to be the me I wish to be. This wholesome person versus this unwholesome one. This kind versus unkind. This generous versus greedy. This patient versus impatient. It's like it's just a cultivation, man. It's my garden, babe. You know, I'm out there. I'm doing the gardening, and I'm hoping that next year, when I look out the window, I'm in bloom. So this whole thing I started on Saturday, continued yesterday and today, is that I know that this form that you all refer to as Ken that appears at 6 p.m. is in fact Ken, but none of us really know a whole lot about Ken. Well, we may know a whole lot, but there's a part that you can't access and I have trouble to access. And the same is true for each of you, whether it's Rachel or Mark and Ann or Chris, it doesn't matter. This much I know. It's just manifestly clear to me as the years go by that you're only able to operate in reference to me or anybody else with as much as you have undertaken to be present. Everybody who's listening to my voice now or in the future knows somebody who they just do not want to listen to for any extended period of time because they are telling you a story that you are not inclined to listen to. And the reason you're not inclined to listen to is as you awaken, talking to sleeping people becomes cumbersome. As you awaken, as you become aware, or I should say, as me, let me not speak for you, as I become more aware, as I have built this practice, I have less enjoyment. Let me not say tolerance, because sometimes I simply have to tolerate people sharing with me. But uh, my enthusiasm wanes very quickly if somebody wants to complain, because complaining should take up that much time. Gratitude should take up that much time. Okay? Complaining, if at all, that much time. Gratitude and those kinds of beneficial thoughts should really be primary. But I have many friends who are stuck. I'm not judging them good or bad people. I'm judging them as people I need to not be exposed to too often because it triggers me, because then I slip into this judgmental place. I told a friend of mine one day, I won't mention his name, but I think it was Barry, and he and I had become like brothers after treatment. We shared a lot. We went to a lot of meetings together. Then we went separate ways, and then we got back together. And I had begun to practice, and so he would. I would visit with him. He would visit with me. We would talk. And then one day he called me, wanted to have lunch, and I didn't want to go to lunch. 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 So I had a friend at the time who said, well, just, get with him. He's a friend. Be honest. Well, you don't tell Ken to be honest because he's always going to over honest. You got to explain to him how to be honest. Anyways, we got together for lunch, and I said, listen, I'm sorry I avoided your phone calls. But the truth is, I don't want to listen to your bullshit. I looked, his eyes got wide, and I said, it's all bullshit. And I said, here's the thing. I don't want to listen to my bullshit. I mean, I just realized as I've been meditating more and more that I'm just this story. I just make up this story, and then I live this story. This big American novel that I could look back on someday and go, wasn't that grand? Well, it was grandiose. When other people were practicing humility, I was practicing arrogance. So I said, I don't want to participate in this anymore, because the way we've been doing this for years is you piss and moan, then I piss and moan. And I'm not interested in pissing and moaning anymore. Yes, I do it, especially if you want to talk about Trump, right? But in the main, I try to recognize when I'm having a one-on-one encounter with somebody, they don't need to listen to my aggravations, because I don't need to listen to my aggravations. But I didn't know how to stop doing that until I started reorganizing inside in my meditation, recognizing that those thoughts are unhealthy. Those thoughts aren't very good. Those are not thoughts I need to grasp. I was in Chicago. I was at a Buddhist temple out on Kingery Highway in 55, and the monk was doing a talk there in English, and he said, there is no thought worth clinging to. Wow. There's a time in my life I couldn't get that. I may have nodded my head, in the past and gone, there's no thought worth clinging to. I would not have understood it. Today, it has a meaning to me. It has a very significant meaning to me. I have no thoughts worth clinging to. I can let them all go the important ones that I need to function, the ones that drive my moral compass, the ones that fuel my inner life, my spiritual life, the ones that divert me from greed and impatience and anger. Um, that's okay, but I don't. That's the practice. Divert myself away from immorality, unwholesomeness, and stuff. And not because, like I said, this isn't about I was a bad guy. It's just about whatever thoughts I had were free to roam. And that's not cool. So I have this much grasp of knowing myself. Anyways, it's getting time to wrap it up. I posted, Are You Lost in the World Like Me? It's not Moby's greatest work, but I thought it was interesting in view of kind of the conversations we've been having. And then I posted a video from my past called Borat and Ken. And that is just from, I should look up what year it was. It was the DFW gun range when Sacha Baron Cohen came disguised as Borat, completely fooled me as he did many others. And anyways, it's out there on the internet. So I thought, I got nothing better to do. Let me post it. You can look at it later. Some of you have seen it. Maybe you haven't. Doesn't matter. I was enamored with the idea that it so represents a me at a point in time that's not me at the point in time now. It's a me thing that highlights for me that I'm not locked into this thing that I call Ken, that I, by the way, was completely locked into, and all directions fed the beast of who I thought I was. I don't know if any of that makes any sense. Doesn't really matter. We had the smallest tonight. The audience is getting smaller, and it may be an indication that with the pandemic going away, or at least it's been mitigated by the vaccinations, that it's going to soon be time to wrap up this kind of thing and go with maybe a weekly thing like AJ and I used to do on Tuesdays, I believe. So that may be where we're inevitably, you got emotion in your pocket. This may be where I am inevitably going, winding down, because you people are winding down too. You're welcome, Becky. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Let's do some meta as we leave. By the way, most of you are not in Dallas, so here's the dilemma I will have tomorrow. I have to be at the temple before 7 o'clock. I usually get there at 6:45. So at best, if I do a podcast tomorrow night, it would have to end about 6:30 if I'm driving. If I'm bicycling, it takes a little longer. So I hadn't given this any thought until just this minute. But starting tomorrow, we go back to live meditation that I've been doing for 10 years at the Buddhist temple. And it has always started at 7 p.m. on Wednesday night. And I'm always on my cushion when 7 o'clock rolls around. All right. Bring your hands together before your hearts. Bow your heads. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. May I be happy, healthy, free from all harm, free from anger, anxiety, and fear. May this path bring me to a place of greater peace and comfort in my life. May my mother and father, all my family members, all my friends be happy, healthy, free from harm. May they also find the path which as they travel brings them to a place of greater peace and comfort. May those persons that disturb me, that I harbor any type of ill will towards, this is an excellent time to simply let go briefly, if only briefly, and think, may they be happy, healthy, free from harm. May they be experiencing peace, comfort, and joy at this very moment. And may all living beings, humans and non-humans, be the recipient of this goodwill, this metta, this loving kindness that we send out. May all living beings be happy, healthy, free from harm, living their lives in safety, comfort, and peace. Satu, Satu, Satu. Well, thank you, Mark and Kathy and Rachel. I see, like I said, we are losing some people. It's inevitable. The pandemic, people are able to go out on a Tuesday night, a Monday night, a Wednesday night. I go to stores now and I'm wearing a mask when I go into the store, but I'm finding a lot of people aren't, even if the sign says they should. I'm also finding that it's the beginning of staff in these places where they always had on a mask. They're not always having a mask on now. The world is devolving. The world is trying to go back to normal. I won't comment tonight on how much I would embrace the idea of this back to normal idea. We'll talk about that in the very near future. Peace out. Yeah, and Mark, please tell Anne thank you, and Becky, please tell Chris thank you, and good night.